Home Assistant version 2022.10 is out, so let's take a look at the highlights. So 2022.10 is out, as I mentioned, and it's entitled All Over the Place. That's the name of this release. And also, it is Hacktoberfest, which means that this is a month of what the heck. If you take a look at what they did in the past, a couple of years ago, they had their first what the heck, and it was when you were able to submit things about Home Assistant without actually going through the whole bug reporting system. It allows you to it allows an avenue for you to submit your questions, comments, feedback about Home Assistant without going through the formalities of GitHub and stuff. So anyway, that's going on right now. Lots of good stuff coming in. Interesting issues, ideas, and suggestions have been coming in. So keep those coming for the month of October. So we're going to continue on with some things, some themes that were there last month. But first, let's talk about Marcel Vanderveld has joined Nabu Casa. Marcel has made contributions to the Z-Wave integration, the Hue integration, and the Music Assistant custom integration. So now he's going to be working on Matter for Home Assistant. And like those of you who are living under a rock don't know, Matter is now officially available and released as version 1.0. I have mixed feelings about that. I don't know that's going to be a lot of changes for anybody today. There's still a lot of interoperability and stuff. All that means is that the standard is now formalized and manufacturers can start building and writing and updating their stuff to match the firmware that's been released, or the version that's been released, or the standard, if I say it right. Okay, so a couple of releases back, Home Assistant introduced Bluetooth integration. Last release was the Bluetooth proxies, which I made a quick video on. And now we're going to talk about active Bluetooth connections. Now, this is just an overview of the release. This is not a detailed explanation of how to do things in this release. So later on, we'll talk about how to do active connections in another video. But what this basically meant is you used to be able to listen for Bluetooth devices and only receive data via the proxies, which is a passive connection. Now you can actively talk to those Bluetooth devices and send data, which is an active connection. So this, of course, adds capability, extends the range of Bluetooth devices. An example, they say, if you want to control the SwitchBot Bluetooth device that's on the other side of the house where you couldn't reach it before, now through your proxy device, you can talk to those types of devices. In addition, the Bluetooth proxy installer website has been updated to support those active connections. And ESP or Bluetooth performance has also been updated, and ESP Home will have an additional release to allow those features to be installed on ESP devices. So faster Bluetooth, more control over active connections, and all kinds of cool stuff with that. In addition to that, there's also iBeacons. These are Bluetooth-enabled devices that send out identifiers announcing locations. You can pick those up with these Bluetooth proxies, and you can also do all kinds of cool things with those iBeacons. So there's documentation on it if you want to read about that. We won't go into details today, but that is a cool option that has now been added. Now, one of these things that is one of those, this should have been done a long time ago. It's kind of neat. It helps save a lot of time, is what's finding the right integration. And essentially what that means is if you are looking for an integration for a specific brand, such as this one or Microsoft or any of the other big brands, you can now search for the brands directly. And if we go to an integration page, you'll see here, if we click on the Add Integration button down here, you'll have an option here to search for all of these different types of integrations. And so if you want to search for something specific to a brand, you can click on that. And now you can see here that you have all of the items that belong or are integrated with that brand or have something to do with that brand. There's one there. Here's another one. You can look at this brand here, a lot of Microsoft type stuff. And if you want to say search for something Zigbee related, now you have different Zigbee things that go along with these types of Zigbee devices. And it mentions that over here. Some brands provide devices that can work via Zigbee or their matching hub, meaning you'd have the choice of integrating their hub or using the devices directly via Zigbee. So this basically makes the choices clearer on what you're looking to add. You don't have to find out how your device could be integrated. You show an integration. In addition, the YAML-only integrations that cannot be found in the user interface are able to be shown in this. So they show all integrations when adding a new integration, including only those available via YAML. So if you can't set it up via the user documentation, if you can't set it up via the user interface, they do provide a link to the user documentation for that particular type of YAML-only integration. So you can find all of your integrations in one spot now. Now this is cool. This is called SubViews for dashboards, and they're calling it one of the coolest and most impactful features has been added to the dashboard. And this is again called SubViews. So each view on a dashboard can now be marked as a subview, and you go into the dashboard settings and you click on the subview button or toggle button right here. What that does is makes the subviews not show up in the navigation bar of your dashboard. That means you can only get to them by using the or a navigation button. So let's take an example here. Let's go over here to this one. I've got a couple of sub buttons over here, and I've got a media one and I've got a camera one. And I used to have that stuff displayed in this column right here. So now all I have to do is click on media, and it takes me to a media view of the things that I have on that particular subview. You can put whatever you want on it. I just happen to have some media items here. And then you can't do anything else up here in the bar. You notice everything is gone except for the back button. It takes you back to where you were before. So if you have a dashboard here and you have a view on a different dashboard. So this one, for example, this camera one right here, this one here is only available, or this is available on a different dashboard than what I have here. If I click on cameras now, it's going to take me over to this dashboard. Now, if I didn't have this subview up here, it would have the options for the other dashboard. And I would be stuck in this kind of limbo land. I'd have to get back over to where I started from. But with it in subview mode, the navigation takes you right back over to where you were before. So now we have these different subview buttons, which is really awesome. You can take a lot of this clutter, and if you only want to view it a little bit, or if you only want to view it at specific times, you can now do a subview and get directly to it. If I want to take a quick check of what's running on my media players, I can come over here real fast. And since this is on my tablet, this is my Office tablet view, I don't have to clutter my tablet up with things I don't necessarily need to see all the time, but I want to have quick access to, which is what these buttons will give us here. So that's really neat, a really awesome feature. And so I will agree, it is a really cool feature to have. And so now you can nest things on your different dashboards. You can create like a phone dashboard, for example, and you can put all your stuff into subviews and then only click on them when you need to get to them. So that's really neat. And then, of course, there's some dialogue restyling that brings things closer to version 3 of the material design that home automation follows. So basically rounded corners on things like that. Now, you can also view YAML automations in the automation editor. Now, I'm trying to get my head around this one because I'm not sure exactly what it does for us. But in the last release, they revamped the automation editor, and they did a really good job. I think I showed that in one of the videos. If you manage your automations manually in YAML, you always have an error message if you try to open an automation in the UI. And so they've improved that. You can now open any automation or script for that matter in the UI. This lets you view your automation, providing a quick glance at its working. So if I look at my automation over here, I've got a few I've selected. I know these are YAML only automations. If I click on this, and the thing is, it probably would have given me an error had I done this before, and now it doesn't. But it's telling me when an MQTT message has been received, and you can open this up and see what it is. The trigger ID is frigate event, topic frigate events, and then this is the payload it's looking for. And then it comes down here and does actions. Now this one is a little more cryptic. You can see what it's doing kind of. Condition is when triggered by frigate event, which is this frigate event up here. It does some templating, and you can see the templates here. And then you can define some of this and look at some of this and look at some of this. So I guess it does actually look pretty good. You can look at all of this in the UI now. You can't necessarily edit it or work on it, but you can certainly go in here and open up all of these things and get a quick glance at what your automation is doing in the traditional view of the way the UI works for automations. That is actually kind of nice. It gives you a quick overview of what your automation is doing. So if you're confused about an automation, you don't remember what it does, you can open it in the UI and then get a quick view of that. And then this is handling version numbers and templates. This gets into a little bit more programmatic stuff. It allows for getting information about a version number, comparing version numbers, and even checking the difference between the two versions. So you can take a version of something that you're running and you can get an alert or set an automation up to determine whether or not the versions are out of sync, new, old, whatever. And you can do stuff with automation that way. So example, it can be helpful when building automations or blueprints for update entities. It could be something where you could decide automatically upgrade and send more detailed information about something when there's a patch available. Now, this is really cool. This release introduces a new way to export data from Home Assistant called Google Sheets. And this allows you to add rows to a Google Sheet document from a service call, allowing you to export data from automations for further processing, visualization, or insights. So I have an example of that here. What I've done here is this, every time there's a state change with this temperature sensor, this happens to be something in the attic, I think. Every time there's a state change, I go ahead and I add a new row to this sheet. And then what I can do, because this is basically, a spreadsheet, so you can go in here and you can actually create graphs and whatever with this. You can graph this stuff over time. So every time there's an update, you'll see that this actually updates the graph and puts this here. Now, the graphing function isn't part of the integration. I just created that. But it does add these rows every time there's an update to that state on that particular temperature sensor. And the way I do that is I have an automation here. And when the attic air temperature changes, it appends it to the sheet. And we can look at that in YAML. And this is basically a quick view of what this looks like. If the entity ID trigger is the state change. Now, if you don't put a from or a to on the state change, every update of the state will actually trigger this automation. And what I do is I call a service called Google Sheets append sheet. And then I go ahead and I put in this state value of that temperature. And so that shows up here. And you can see on the automation, the data is temp is the column name. And then the value is what comes from that state. So you can just keep doing this over and over, and it allows you to graph this stuff. Now, the caveat to that is right now, only one sheet has access, or it only has access to one sheet, whatever you create in the automation. The other thing about this is, and don't shoot the messenger on this one, but you have to integrate this with the Google API. And if you've followed any of my Nest videos, that can be a daunting thing. However, if you have already set this up through Nest or set Nest up, you're already way ahead. And the documentation on this actually talks about it, how to do it. And essentially all you're doing is enabling the Google Sheets API. And from there, then you can start posting to the sheet itself. So it's cool. And it does things to allow you to visualize better, store your data offsite automatically through automation and whatnot. So you can go through here. Here's all of the steps. If you've already done everything here, it says you can jump down to step 13 right here, which is essentially, actually, I didn't even have to do some of this anyway. I went even farther down, but it's going to require you to mess with the Google API. And that's not always easy for people. Maybe it's time for another video on using the sheets. Just let me know in the comments if you want to see that, and I'll tell you how I did it. All right, so other noteworthy changes, long-term statics, it should be statistics card, now uses a unit you have selected in a sensor to be. So if you change the sensor, it will match. When removing integrations that use application credentials, we will now ask you if you want to clean those up. That's nice because sometimes you can get a long list of credentials that are not used. And if you try to add something back later, it'll mess things up. So now we ask you to remove those, or they ask you if you want to remove them. The Net Atmo has lots of upgrades. If you have a Prusa printer, you can use Prusa Link. BT Home now supports binary sensors. BT Home is a big thing that's up and coming here. That's Bluetooth Home. The HomeKit controller supports thread transport. And then there's some other things here. Oh, and the Min-Max helper now supports calculating statistical range. So if you want to show the difference between the coldest and warmest rooms or whatever, you can now use a helper to do that, which is really neat. And then Netgear has a bunch of switches to control things like parental controls, Wi-Fi availability and stuff. So if you use Netgear stuff, you can now do more with it. Then we talked about Google Sheets and some other new integrations that are available and whatnot. All right, so always I will leave this by talking about the breaking changes. I will not go through all of the breaking changes, but if you do not read this, you could break your thing. So make sure you go through and read your breaking changes before you update. And I will always point this out because I'm a Z-Wave user. You must use Z-Wave JS Server 1.24.0 or greater. One of the things I did notice, though, is that whenever I upgraded my my Raspberry Pi when I was doing the demo here, since it talks to my older or my Z-Wave server on my other Home Assistant instance, it told me it was out of date. I needed a newer version of Z-Wave JS for it to work. So it does show up in the repair dashboard when you have an out of sync Z-Wave, or at least it did this time. So I would still recommend making sure you update this before you update Home Assistant so you don't have a problem with your Z-Wave stuff here. And with that, if you're a custom integration developer, there's things here to think about. And then these are no longer around. Ambi, Climacell flew near you, and the USCIS service is now gone. So let me know if you have any questions down in the comments below. That was just a quick overview of 2022.10. Let me know if you want any details on any of the things I talked about and how I maybe made some of these things work for this particular video. And I really appreciate you watching. If you want to subscribe, hit that subscribe button. If you like what you see here, hit that like button. All that stuff helps the AI do its business, helps the video show up so people can actually know that I make these videos. So we will see you on the next one. And again, thanks for watching.